You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of We Deepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional coach and matchmaker. You may have heard that We Deepen has launched a love club. It is a 6-month intimacy accelerator for anybody who is currently single or available for dating. I will be honest, there are people who are joining the love club who are in open relationships or polyamorous relationships. This is for you if you are currently single, though, and again, available. And maybe you could use some oomph in your love life. The accelerator includes peer-to-peer matchmaking, comprehensive intimacy education, and accountability to your love goals. 36 people will start this first cohort beginning of December of 2023 and will go until May of 2024. If you are listening to this podcast and that time frame has passed, don't you worry, because we are realizing how much people are loving this. Within 2 weeks of launching the Love Club, we have over 14 people registered. And I do understand that New Year's is going to come up and a lot of people put love as their New Year's resolution. Actually, I'll give you something really interesting to note. On the first Sunday after New Year's in the evening, typically between 8 to 9 p.m. is the most popular time of the entire year that people will be on dating apps. So if you want, like, that's where everybody who's currently single, they're like running to the dating apps. However, this is kind of, we're in 2023, moving into 2024. I also think that people are over it. Like, I don't want to go there anymore. People, as I'm doing the interviews for the Love Club, they talk about that it's a numbers game. And sure, you can think of it as a numbers game, but I think it's more of a quality game. That the dating apps have everybody in the whole world, pretty much. If you're currently single, you're there. Actually, there's even been, I think that Yahoo did an article about how that over 50% of people on dating apps aren't even actually single because they're maybe in relationships that are stagnant, or they're just looking for novelty or something to excite their life, that they've stepped into that world. And over 50% of people lie. A third of the population. This was a stat that was given before the pandemic. So before the pandemic, 1/3 of the population never even left the dating app to meet anybody in person. And I know if you're listening to this podcast, you don't desire a pen pal. You want real life, deep intimacy. So this Love Club is going to immerse you in an elevated intimacy journey that you are going to embark on with 36 people who have been vetted and curated. And it's not necessarily that you come inside of the Love Club and you meet your one there. Hey, maybe. I'm sure that's going to happen. However, it is about all of us diving into our networks and becoming each other's matchmakers. So go to WeDeepen.com. You can click on the Love Club. You can also go to WeDeepenLoveClub.com and you can see all the details. I'd love to have a conversation to see if joining is right for you. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, follow, rate it, give it 5 stars. It helps more people find it, helps me continue to host it, and it also helps to bring more people into the We Deepen ecosystem for us to introduce to you. Interestingly enough, people will always ask, what is the difference of going to a private matchmaker versus, joining something like the Love Club? And the big difference is that we are out in the world. We are curating the best social and transformational experiences. You're going to meet today, actually, she's the second time on this podcast, Kimi Inch, who's a kink educator. I just embarked on a 4-day immersion with her of something more here in Austin, Texas. It was life-changing. The program, I want everybody. So if you're listening, you should come and take something more and be a part of this experience. We're going to get into today what I experienced there, but those are the types of experiences that you're going to find at We Deepen that we curate. And so I'm present at them. I'm looking for the people inside of them and making those introductions and hearing what people are navigating in their relational life for the purpose of connecting you to each other and also connecting you with the facilitators to help you prepare, feel ready, and also deepen your entire intimacy journey this lifetime. So yeah, we're going to get in. We're going to have a conversation on kink and immersion because, this is a really important aspect of our relational life. I, for one, yes, I like having a companion and a partner to do life with, but I notice when I'm single that I miss intimacy. I miss the erotic play. I miss orgasms. And oftentimes this isn't something that's necessarily talked about publicly. Our sex ed curriculums, pardon my language, they kind of suck. Like they don't really teach us anything. We're 13 and they, are teaching us about, the bodies and, they miss hormones. They miss like the full spectrum of what's possible. And I get it. They're scared to tell you. But it's really not that scary. So I'm sitting here with Kimi Inch. We're at her home in Austin, Texas. Kimi, welcome to the podcast for the second time.
Thank you so much, Your Majesty. I am so excited to be back and really appreciating your beautiful words about the event and excited to dive into it more with your audience.
Your Majesty. I love when you call me that. At the top of this year, I did come into my kink name, and it is Your Majesty. And I feel so excited when I hear that. Let's start there. Where, in this type of space, kink, first off, people are oftentimes confused about what kink is. A lot of people say, I'm not kinky. But I oftentimes will follow up, do you like to play? And as I was driving over to your place, I kept thinking in my mind, like, girls just want to have fun, because that's what kink to me is. It's novel. It's play. It's experimenting what's possible and feeling into my emotions. Do I feel comfortable here? Do I not? Am I expanding? But the naming, there was something that feels really good with Your Majesty. And I know you use daddy or mistress at times. What is it about the names?
Yeah, well, I want to say it's completely understandable why people would feel nervous about venturing into this world of kink, because what's really shown in the media and through the images that we see is this really cliche, dark, heavy, intense, like sort of images. And what you've described around experimentation and play, I couldn't agree more, because the elements that we really want to bring forward in the work that I'm doing is about imagination and creativity and how you can bring all of those parts of you together. And having the name is such a special way of embracing our different facets of ourselves. So thinking about, who we are to the day-to-day 9 to 5, business hours or with our families is one part of ourselves, but there's so much more to us than just that. So being able to take on a title like Mistress, Daddy, Your Majesty is an opportunity to bring forward maybe other personality types within us. It's almost if you thought of yourself as having an internal symphony. There's many different instruments within a symphony, and when they all play together, it can be so beautiful, but sometimes you want to give that violin a solo. And maybe Her Majesty is this part of you that wants to come out and shine and be in that regal, all-powerful, like worship me, adore me, recognize that I am this incredible being. And it's fun to celebrate that and to bring that forward. Like when I say it, it just makes me so happy to say Your Majesty, because I can see the twinkle in your eye and I can feel within me that like, ooh, this is so cute. This is so fun. It reminds me of being kids again and playing make-believe and being able to explore and play in that way. But as adults, we get to bring in that erotic element that just makes it even more juicy.
So with the Love Club, as we've launched, we have received over 50 applicants within 10 days, and I have done numerous interviews. And one interview that I had done the other day, it was a woman, and we were speaking about how, that it's almost that she's dating, but there's this fear of that she feels within the partners, within the men, of standing still for a moment in time with her, that they're almost looking out into the world of what else is available. And I see this mismatch is happening because for somebody to really go into these realms of kink and play and eroticism and feel the full embodiment, as you speak of, like there's so much within inside of each of us, it requires a level of safety. Ken Page from Deeper Dating, one of my mentors, often, he speaks about this question that when you're dating, to ask yourself constantly, does my soul feel safe with this person? And when it's almost like, I think that inside of us, we're all desiring to experience like the full spectrum of love. And we don't realize that you can find so much within one person if you give the space to be still for a moment in time. And so instead I look at, I laugh and I hey, whatever, I think we all go through different phases of our life, and there's a space in between sometimes of before we arrive. And I don't know, wherever you want to arrive, that's subjective to your own unique desires. But poly sometimes can be a safe word. And it can be limiting. And I don't want to take anything away from the poly experience as well, because that can be part of dating. But what would you say to somebody who's craving this level of intimacy, but maybe can't find or hasn't arrived with somebody to go into these realms, to feel safe enough to experience? I'm here, we're going to talk about something more. And in the next room, there's a spanking bench. There's a bed that you can chain somebody onto. There's a cross. But I have to feel safe to step into those worlds.
So true. And safety is important. And when we talk about safety, we're talking about a felt sense of safety. And sorry, the nervous system is such an important role in being able to create the life of our dreams. So if we are struggling to keep a regulated nervous system, it's really hard for us to step into our pleasure and to be in deep connection and intimacy with another. So creating opportunities for us to build resiliency in our nervous system is actually a really important step in creating the ability to show up for relationships in the ways that we really crave and desire. So when you're working with a therapist or a coach or attending a well-organized, conscious event where people can hold a container and hold a safe space for you to expand into these new realms, it actually shows your nervous system, oh, I didn't die. Like literally, that's kind of what's happening in our nervous system. Like, this feels like I'm going to die. And giving ourselves a way to titrate into these expansive experiences are so important. So yeah, giving your nervous system an opportunity to be shown, hey, I can actually be vulnerable. I can actually be in a room where there might be erotic energy. I can actually discuss and talk about things vulnerably. It doesn't even have to be erotic, and I can be heard and people can be present with me, and I won't be judged or rejected or shamed for it. Like being able to actually put yourself in positions where you can show your nervous system that it's okay to be me and that I'm safe in the world opens you up to infinite possibility around pleasure and relational experiences. So yeah, I really recommend people do seek out coaching, therapy, or conscious sort of thoughtful events where they can sort of play in those realms and show themselves that this is a safe place for me to expand into.
It's that coming to it, then you're not necessarily relying on this one person to provide you access to a deeper level of intimacy. So something more, and I want to go into that 4-day immersion because, as I said, I think everyone should experience that. If you're listening, Something More is happening in Austin, Texas in February. There's 2 back-to-back weekends, February 8th through the 11th and February 15th through the 18th. And it's limited to about 20 to 25 people. And you journey through the erotic, like the world of eroticism as a collective. And so it's not necessarily required for you to have a partner to come into that experience. I would say that the attendees, 50% of the attendees were there with a partner, and then 50% of them were people who are currently single. I like to use currently single because I am statements are so powerful. So currently single inside of the space. And out of those who are currently single is fascinating because there was one man and the rest were single women. And Kimi, you and I, before we pushed record on this podcast, we were like wanting to encourage more men to come into these spaces and to be in a state of practice and witness. For me, I have been studying relationships for the past decade, and it's been a journey of me stepping into spaces like you lead, and all types of other teachers in the Tantra realm to, connection realms. And I've done the eye gazing so many times that for me, I think my nervous system is so regulated in that space that it's so easy for me. But others in the space who are newer to it, I can see they feel uncomfortable. And so I'm kind of a true testament to when you do it over and over and over again, almost that my next, it's like I deepen and then I get to discover something new that would be a fear for me to overcome. If anybody listened to this, the last podcast that is released right before this one, we talk about pegging. We're not going to go into pegging this episode, but we talk about pegging in that one. And that was something that I was like, I'll never do that. But as you continue to deepen, you get to see these new layers of yourself that you didn't realize had existed. Kimi, you're curating the spaces. So Something More, it's, I don't necessarily like to use the word safety, and you don't know what's necessarily safe for one person versus another person, but when you're putting these experiences out in the world, who do you see are taking to them and why are they coming?
Well, I love that you kind of mentioned the pegging because it's like never say never, girl. But when it comes to curating events and containers for people to explore in, it's really important to be clear of the intention and to bring that level of heart-centered consciousness into everything that I do. What you're describing is having a playful, practice playground so that you can actually have some experimentation in a safe space. So often these spaces can feel like really intense and really hardcore, but it's so much fun to say, instead of blood, sweat, and tears, can't we just do grace, ease, and elegance instead? And let's all kind of be journeyers on this path of eroticism together. So creating a safe space, wanting to make sure that we are supported with the angels that I have in place so that there's multiple people there to support the group in whatever experiences that they want to have, but creating an invitation for people to know inherently that they get to choose. They get to go at their own pace and they get to decide what invitations they would like to accept and what invitations they would like to decline. And what I say starting off for the 4 days is everything is just a series of invitations. And that's all this is. There's no expectation. There's no demand. There's nobody there that's, analyzing you or what you're doing. And we want to really connect people to the truth of themselves and feel into their bodies of am I available to stick my pinky toe into this invitation, knowing full well I could stop it at any time. I can change my mind at any time, or I can just dive in deeper if it's feeling like it's really good. So really wanting people to feel empowered in these spaces, to know that they can feel into themselves and decide at what level they want to participate, and essentially create a space for people to pick their own adventure. So we tell people, often in these erotic spaces, people have this image that, oh, I have to be super cool and be so sexy. And we really want to encourage realness and rawness and vulnerability over this performance sort of sexy image that people carry with them. When people let that go and shed into their vulnerability, oh my gosh, the level of intimacy that can happen is so hot, like it is. It's really, really hot to see people vulnerable and real. We welcome all emotions in this space. We want people to know that they are also an adult and that they get to decide how they want to show up. And we want to celebrate, like finally, I tell people as one of the agreements, celebrate everything. Celebrate just sitting in this chair and being in this room. Celebrate if you tried on an exercise for 5 seconds and then decided to stop because it didn't feel right for you. Like celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. And that's the kind of environments that I want to be in, is these celebratory, real, like conscious, heart-centered sort of environments.
I want to take everybody who's listening through the 4-day immersion. And I want to start by saying that the space that the experience is being held in is an attraction of its own. It's almost, you go to a city and you see what venues you should go visit, what tourist attractions. I can see that, and I know you're getting ready to move into a new space, and I imagine that space will even be an upgrade from this space. But what's already here is absolutely gorgeous, and I can see in the future that as generations, in the future, we'll actually stop by this house and it'll be like, this is where Kimi Inch lived. And there'll be a sign out front and be like, let's go tour inside of what they did back in the day. Like this was one of the first. And in the future, that many homes will have these playrooms inside of their houses. And you're kind of paving the way for that. I mean, Kimi, you are legendary in what you create. And I did say that at the end of the 4-day immersion, is that I've done a lot of work and I've experienced a lot of what the intimacy teachers are teaching. And it's not to take anything away from them, because everyone is so unique, but you win of the types of play party and a journey that you took us through that was so unique and profound. The experience began on a Thursday evening. People flew in from out of town to be a part of this experience, and we all welcome into the space. And there was a container that was set. We had a champagne celebration. We all dressed up in, something that felt sexy to us, whatever that meant to you. I remember getting ready, and my flatmate was like, I was like, is this sexy enough? She's like, yeah, it's fine. And so there was even the part of like preparing myself to go be a part of this experience that was sort of unknown. I wasn't quite sure what I was fully stepping into. And then I arrived here and, you set the container, and then we did a couple of exercises. So I was able to meet the people who were going to journey with me through. And as you said, it's like you're meeting them to be like, nobody in here is going to kill me. They're all here for, similar reasons than I am. We're all here to practice intimacy, to learn something new. It was beautiful to witness the couples and also to honor their relationships. And I think that's something really special about experiences like this. It's that we're relationshiping in community, whether you're in a relationship or whether you're currently single, and we're honoring that experience and we're honoring that couple. And then the evening ended with a demonstration. You and one of your angels took us through a kink, like a kink experience. And maybe too, I'll pause there and you could speak to that experience that we get to demonstrate and witness. So we even know what's possible throughout the weekend.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say that your words are just like, making me just feel so good. So thank you. It feels good that it felt like it had value and it impacted you in such a positive way. And the purpose of the opening night, yes, is to create the container to let people know what they can expect, but also wanting to ignite their imaginations and their, sort of spark their own arousals and intrigue. So making sure that we demonstrate what a conscious kink experience can look like, I think is such an important part of the experience because, like I said, so often we have these sort of cliche, stereotypical images in our head around what kink can look like. And we want to expand what the definition of kink is beyond just the whips and chains, but show the level of creativity and intimacy. And yes, there is elements of leader and follower where there's a power dynamic being at play, but it's really attuned. It's really intimate. It's really passionate and exciting. It's not like this cold, hardcore image that people are used to. Yes, we're going to also demonstrate elements of impact play where I'm spanking my angel and I'm flogging my angel as a way of moving energy in her body and helping her get more expanded and more comfortable in herself. And yes, we demonstrate things around sensation play and tying her to the cross so that she can experience, everything from feathers to roses on her skin and just showing her like just how, beautiful that experience can be, doing elements of energy sex and showing elements of bondage and restraints, but wanting to always highlight the relational component that is so beautiful of that dynamic of just showing the love, the care, the presence, and the play of that dynamic and letting people know like we're going to be experimenting and playing with these concepts throughout the whole weekend. And you get to decide for you, what is your truth? Like, what are you passionate about? What does your imagination want to lead you? And giving people permission to go there and to have their desires and sexual energy in a safe and celebratory place. So yeah, the demonstration is all about piquing people's interest in seeing what's possible and then helping them basically come back home to themselves and their own desires and what they really want to create for themselves and giving them the tools to do that.
We're going to come back to flogging because that was Saturday during the immersion. And there might be somebody listening that's like, what is flogging? I also want to mention that Kimi's podcast that she did previously on Deepen with Christina, we did go into her story of how she came into doing this line of work. So that episode is called Beyond the Whip. So definitely, if you're interested in Kimi's story, go back and listen to that episode. I'll link that in the description here. And then, as we deepened into the experience and moved into day 2 on Friday, that's where we went into the erotic blueprint. And while I'm speaking with a lot of people as they're registering for the Love Club, inside of the program is comprehensive relationship education. And inside of the Love Club, they're going to meet experts, and I hope you're going to teach one of the master classes inside of there, and we'll scratch the surface inside of the Love Club. You're going to get access to go deepen with each of these teachers and experience something more. But I've noticed that a lot of people will say to me, others are like, yes, give me the education. But some are like, I know this, like I have been studying relationships. I've read the book, but I think it's really different when you're in a practice of it consistently, because sure, you can read a book, you can watch a TED Talk, but when you're immersed in an experience, and this is something that is to do throughout your lifetime, it's not even that you go into one workshop and you're done. It's the consistency of doing the workshops because you want to experience an epic love story this lifetime. And these are, rather than going to King's Dominion or Disney World, like this is like the space to go to really tap further into yourself. I remember, this might be a side rant, but my family, we went to Disneyland a couple years ago, and they tell us it's the happiest place on earth. And I was there and waiting in these like stale lines for this ride that was amazing. The ride was absolutely amazing, but it was 3 minutes long. And I thought that like Mickey and Minnie Mouse will be like hanging out with me in the line as I wait, but no, it's just a bunch of people on iPads or their iPhones. And then they get on the ride and they get off the ride and, you know, the kids are like, Mommy, Daddy, what's next? What's next? Let's go here. Let's go there. And I'm like, wait, did you just not experience like, can we breathe? And what just happened? So this is like amusement, like the relationship education is something that is never ending and unfolding. There's always so much more to discover, and particularly with a partner, because it's what bonds you with another human being. Okay, so day 2, we go into the erotic blueprints, and I bring that up because I learned about the erotic blueprints about a year ago, and I have, participated in some conversations and some studies on them. But this day was dedicated to a full day of going into each blueprint. The 5, just similar to how there's the 5 love languages, there are the erotic blueprints, which are sensual, sexual, kinky, energetic, and shapeshifter. And we have a lecture. I'll say there's a lecture about each of the blueprints, and then you go into a practice activity where you get to experiment with each of the blueprints. And you had curated Casey McNeil to come in and teach those, and that was such a profound day to awaken. And it was pretty much 5 hours dedicated to the erotic blueprint. Why did you choose that system to bring into something more?
Yeah. So we originally wanted to bring in the erotic blueprints because I can attribute every successful and erotic encounter with the ability of how attuned me and my partner are to ourselves and to each other. So there's this element that we call attunement, which is basically helping people get in sync with each other, helping them get in sync with themselves, and really being able to open to greater opportunities for intimacy. So the erotic blueprints is a great tool for deeper attunement with yourself and your partner. When you have an idea of what turns you on, what gets you aroused, what gets you turned off, and you know your partners as well, then you're able to meet them more fully, and you're hopefully both able to set yourselves up to win. And that's what we want. We want people to feel like they're winning in their sex lives, in their relationships. And yes, the erotic blueprints can be applied to eroticism, but they can be applied to all parts of life, really. And when Casey brought in her erotic blueprints, I felt like it was important to create an exercise or an experience for each blueprint. So that's kind of how we teamed up. She's a erotic blueprint coach, and she brought in her knowledge. And I was like, I need to bring in the somatics. That's my area of expertise. I want to bring the experiential. So I created the 5 different experientials for the blueprint so people could have a bodily, visceral experience of it. Because that's really what creates change in our systems, is when we actually have a life experience of something that is usually involves human contact and human connection. So creating an opportunity for people to experience not just learning cognitively what is the energetic, but experiencing something with energy with a partner. We played with energy within our day of experimenting with the erotic blueprints. We used sensuality and played with sensations and had people feeding each other, chocolates and strawberries while playing with feathers and creating other sensations for them. We played in the sexual in a way that we brought in dirty talk, and we created an opportunity for people to share their ultimate fantasies and hear them said back to them in this really erotic setting where they could actually feel seen and feel celebrated for their desires. We played with the shapeshifter, where people can actually ask for what they want and be filled up in ways they've never experienced before, and knowing that being able to not only understanding it, mentally, but also feeling it in their bodies is showing them what is possible. Because most of the time people just don't know what's possible in their lives until they actually have an experience of it. It's all theory until then. So we wanted to create a well-rounded experience with the erotic blueprints so people could actually try on what this means for them and their nervous systems again, and also like how they can apply that to all their relationships to come or the relationships that they're already in.
yeah, for me, I first took the quiz in like 9 months ago, and I was Central was my top. And I remember at the time, like, hating the erotic blueprints. I was like, I feel so like limited with just this one. And I was like in a box, and I partly because I think I knew there was something more, but I hadn't, I love something more, but I didn't know my imagination couldn't go there on its own. It needed it needed something more. I needed to experience something more, to open up, like to hit those creative channels inside of my own mind and heart. And then right before I walked into day 2, I took the test again, quiz, assessment. And I was a shapeshifter. And that felt right to me. And I love the idea. I think there's probably a little bit of a shapeshifter inside of all of us, because in learning of, your primary blueprint is a gateway into all of the others. And you can play with the energetics, which is, your frequency and kind of more of like the feeling and the sensations and the godly like experience. And I can also be in a moment where, you want to light the candles and play the romantic love songs and gaze into each other's eyes. Or, you might just be in a moment of like, let's play cops and robbers, and I'm going to arrest you tonight and tie you up. And there might be another, experience of where you're just like, let's go fuck, like, let's go into it and have a fully sexual space. So, the blueprints are gateways and open up your imagination to what else is possible. So then we went into day 3, which was focused on, we learned shibari rope tying and we learned flogging. And both of those I've seen, it's so interesting to hear the word trending. I think that it's more of just giving, because of the internet, because of social media, we now have more lenses available to see what's possible. And I loved learning how to tie the ropes and the flogging element. You brought 2 professionals in to teach those experiences. And I guess maybe, of all of the ways to play in the erotic realm, what was it? Why did you choose shibari? Why did you choose flogging? And what was your goal for people to experience on that Saturday?
Yeah. So after feeling like we're laying some foundation with the erotic blueprint, and we talked about communication on that day as well. And we feel like that was a perfect opportunity to sort of intensify and escalate the energy by incorporating aspects of bondage and restraints with impact play, 2 really common practices when people dive into kinky exchanges. And we wanted to create a safe space for people to dip their toe into those worlds, because quite often, like I mentioned before, there's this idea of like, oh, I'm, repressing someone if I tie them up, or, oh, I'm somewhat abusing someone if I spank them. We wanted to create an opportunity for people to have a safe experience of it so that they could feel like this could be a useful tool in creating more depth, intimacy, and pleasure in their lives. With shibari and rope bondage, there's this opportunity to have intimacy with the partner as you go into what it means to be able to surrender or lead someone through a process of being surrendered as they get immobilized on some level, and how that can actually liberate a person to feel like, oh, I don't have to be responsible for anything, especially as I know women these days, especially all of us are, mostly 2-income households, and women are working so much. It's also a great opportunity for both men and women to be able to experiment with this idea of surrender and being able to just be held and taken care of by another person. And people were able to have a healthy experience of that. And with impact play, which is commonly known as striking another person for sexual gratification, how we like to use it is not necessarily as a form of punishment, but as a form of moving energy in a person's body, which could actually help them feel more connected to themselves, help them get out of their heads, help them release emotions in some cases, help them, process that intensity level in a way that feels really pleasurable and helps them feel more alive. So we wanted to create these opportunities for people to have more tools for their tool belt, and to see that what has been portrayed as something that can feel really scary and confusing is actually like really liberating, really expansive, and helps people feel like, oh, I have so much more that's possible in what I can create in my life. And that's the point of it, is really giving people options and helping them get excited about what they can create for themselves.
When I was flogged. I got a one-on-one session with Robert the evening of the play party, which was Saturday night. We'll go into that too. And between the flogging and also even the rope tying, this is going to sound strange how I'm going to compare this, but I love going and getting my hair done. And somebody, I can feel that little like pull in my hair as they're giving me lots of attention. Same with when I get my makeup done. You could go into a massage, how you go and get massage, and massage helps you move energy. There's a level of, I think, with the makeup and the hair, of attunement that they are providing to me that is so relaxing to my nervous system. And these ways of playing with each other, and they are healing modalities. They're attunement modalities. We're being of service to one another. It's a service oriented space. I find it rather interesting too, is that this is so taboo, the work, because they might consider like quote unquote sex work. It goes into that category, but it's not necessarily that. Like, if you do not have a partner at home, my partner most likely is not going to do a really good job with my hair or my makeup. They can be trained to give a great massage and to do a great flogging session as well. But there's a space to go and learn and practice those modalities. And it is nervous system regulation and experience and play. And I think sometimes that we've gotten so far away with consumerism that we're spending the time of going, on, online shopping or into the malls and think we're feeling fulfilled by those experiences, which we're not. We're really craving intimacy. And so all of these, from the spectrum all the way to getting your hair done through to having, a full on depth penetrative sex experience with somebody of feeling connected. This is how humanity actually comes into connection with one another. I did, in learning the rope tying, both sides of me came to life. The side of me came to life of, particularly in the rope tying, I loved rope tying somebody else. Like, that was a really sweet experience. And I did, at the night of the play party, get to have an experience with a woman who invited me to tie her up. And the flogging, I did get to have that experience with Robert, who's a professional, of him flogging me. And we got to also, even as we were learning, pair up with somebody in the space who we were, learning partners with one another. And it is of a moving energy. I wouldn't say, like, it didn't hurt in the general sense of pain. But it was It's like when you don't, it's like when a doctor gives you a shot, and this might not be a good comparison. People might be listening and be like, I hate shots. No, I don't want a shot. I am a strange person. I don't mind going to the dentist. I think I have a fine time there. But there is a way of moving energy inside of these experiences. Kimi, as being somebody who, does this for a profession, and you've seen many people grow through this experience, like what are the benefits, and are there any particular stories of somebody who's had a profound experience with either the ropes or the flogging?
Oh yeah, absolutely. What you're describing is like really leaning into concepts that are uncomfortable. And that's where the growth is. You'll even hear Tony Robbins and these traditional sort of coaches that are helping people evolve, but not in an erotic sense. But there's a sense of like, what happens when we let go of our comfort and we actually lean into the unknown and actually lean into ways that might actually put a little strain on our bodies or might actually be uncomfortable on some level. What can we learn about ourselves in those places? Because quite often, evolution, empowerment, and change doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't usually happen if you're bubble wrapped and you're sitting in a padded room and you're just like staring at the ceiling. Usually it's like getting out there and having an experience with another person where there's human contact and connection, and where you might be actually, leaning into something that's like scary or thrilling or something like that. That's how we make memories and how we change our belief systems and rewire our brains. So when people are opening up to the concepts of something specific like rope bondage, for example, they are playing with this idea of like, things that are considered to be uncomfortable or taboo, like immobilization or not being able to move or being, controlled by another person. When you change that instead into being taken care of, like you are worthy to receive. You don't always have to do something in order to receive pleasure. You can just be, like you can just be seen in this place. You can just be held. You can just be attended to. I mean, we haven't experienced that since we were infants, really, and people can have an experience of bondage where they're like, wow, I don't think I've been that well attuned to, taken care of, and, given to since I was a little kid. And like, this is such a beautiful, heartwarming experience to know that I can receive without having to give in return. There's no expectation of this being transactional. So these spaces can be really powerful with clear communication and understanding what people are desiring. But this could be a space where people can feel like they can just be, and they can actually have a sense of their own worthiness and that they are enough or that they are not too much. When people tell me, I always feel like I have too many needs and that I'm too much, I'm like, bring it on. Like, let me see how too much you can be. I would really love to, I double dare you to be too much in this space. And people get so excited about like, wow, I don't have to limit myself. I don't have to. That is so healing and empowering and reassuring for people to have that experience, especially with people they just met and people who are strangers, or with their partners, where they're awakening to this like understanding of like, oh, wow, there's so much more here, right? Like there's so much possibility here. Like, let's play in this. So yeah, if people experimenting with bondage or impact play are leaning into the uncomfortable and finding out that they can actually just be, and then they're enough, and that they're worthy of receiving pleasure from others.
You did have us on our edge the entire weekend. And I know there was a few people who had experiences of wanting to leave, feeling moments of uncomfortable, and then returning into the space. And because of that, you taking us directly to the edge, as you said, the memories, that's really what creates significant memories and growth, because we're right there. And the event accumulated into a play party on Saturday evening. After now we've gone through, 2.5 days together. We've witnessed, we've experienced, and now we're sort of set free to be ourselves inside of that, and inside of that experience. And there's the 25 of us who are in the program together, and then other students of yours are invited to be a part of that. So that added another layer of like unknown as we walked in, like who's going to be here. And when we arrived, we we're all gathered into a room and we had an opening circle and a ceremony to ground people into the space. And I remember what I shared is that my first play party was in 2018 or 2019. And it was a friend's place, and it was like 12 people that had come together. So it was very small and intimate. And inside of that space, they had, and I think they usually do this like role and play party spaces where if you're a man, you have to come with a woman. And so when I walked into that, I wasn't aware of that ahead of time. I was a single woman in the space, and we did this opening circle, and I was a bit uncomfortable. I'm like, I love my work and what I do, and I'm comfortable on my computer. And I remember thinking as they're going the opening circle of how do you feel? And I'm like, I just want to go back and be in front of my computer. This is strange. I know some of you people here, some of you are my advisors. I'm not quite sure how this dynamic will work because you're in a relationship with her. I was taught on the playground as a kid, like, don't hit on someone else's boyfriend. Like, you just don't do that. But here now we were in this space, and that rule was lifted. That was not a rule for this experience. So that actually felt better for me. And I think that there was a safetiness in it, or maybe not necessarily the word safety, but an alignment, because everybody in the space had been through your body of work. And so, yeah, we did this opening circle. And one of the things that I said that I wanted to experience was to bring out my Dom. And I got to do that inside of the space. People heard that and came up to me later on. And yeah, we'd love to have a session with you. I had something, an experience with a couple, an experience with a woman where I tied her up, and then an experience with a man who I kind of pulled out my creativity and from a psychological standpoint, domed him and played and developed this level of intimacy and trust. And inside of the play party experience, a lot of people will get nervous of coming into something like that and be like, oh my God, I don't want to be having sex with strangers in weird places and rooms. And that was not it. No one touched my genitals the entire time that I was there. And that was something that I had as a boundary for myself. And also knowing, it's interesting, I recently, after the weekend, I had a date with a man he's become a play partner of mine. And I was just riding off of the erotic energy from that weekend. And I noticed that I was much more open and exploratory, and our time together was so much more fun and freeing because I wasn't trapped in my mind about what it could be, it was just so freeing. And I think that that's when somebody comes to something more weekend, you leave with feeling like completely expanded and more open for deeper connection. So the play party experience, I know that there was a lot of people that you're witnessing, and I will say, Kimi, for being someone that I know you're holding so many social dynamics in the spaces, and I've been in that world where you're holding the spaces and you're like, okay, there's this couple over here, they're navigating this. There's this human over here, they're healing from a heartbreak. There's this one over here that, this one used to date this one, is now dating this one, and they're all in this space. So you're holding so much energy. How do you, what is it that, I'm going to ask a personal question, how do you prepare for something like that? And what is it that you're observing in the space during a play party that you're hosting?
Yeah, the whole point and an intention of the play party is to help people integrate and apply the information that they've been learning over the last few days, and giving them a real life experience of how that can sort of be navigated with others. You're right, like that you had your classmates, there's about 22 of you, and then we invited maybe 20 to 25 more people who had worked with me previously. If they had not worked with me, they were accompanied by someone who had. So there was kind of like unleash the kittens and see what they learn from having a real life experience with other people. people, and being able to sort of tune in, the whole weekend is alcohol free and there's no sort of substances that are taken at all the entire weekend, and wanting to create a space where people can just really feel their eros. And the rooms that we have for the play party are designed to pick your own adventure again, because that's what the whole weekend's theme is, where you get to decide as an erotic blueprint, like, I want to go into the sensual room. I want to go to the sexual room. I want to go to the energetic room. And knowing that if anything felt like too intense and you needed to take some space for yourself, we want to kind of encourage people to be in the adult space and know that, okay, if things are feeling too hot and heavy in one of these rooms, I know I can go into the white room, which is the energetic room, and I can just have a platonic cuddle or a conversation or just meditate and decompress. Or if I am ready to ramp things up and I at least want to go beyond erotic energy and actually be in sexual energy, I can go upstairs where the sexual room is, the red room, and know that I can play in sexual energy where genitally focused interactions are permitted. So the idea of like holding the space is part of it, and knowing that I have support from the angels who are there to also support all the attendants, but also like really after those few days, people are really in tune with their adult selves and they know they can take care of themselves. They have more faith in themselves. They have more trust, and the self-trust piece is really what links to being connected to your true sense of surrender and your true sense of power. So people can actually experiment with their own self-trust. Can I navigate this? Can I be in a real world situation of a play party and apply what I'm learning? And I might make an oopsie. I might make a mistake, but I know I'll be able to learn from it. And I know I can hold myself in compassion as I continue to grow in this space. So yeah, we wanted to create an opportunity for people to step into their adulthood and step into their self-trust as they navigate an experience that they've been sort of prepared for the last 3 days.
I loved how you brought in the oopsie and ouchies, because just like life is messy at times, intimacy is also messy. We can take all the courses and go to all the immersions, and your individual learning is going to happen by not doing it perfectly, because what is perfectly, it is perfect all in every moment. And so in these spaces, as if you're coming with a significant other, or you're coming by yourself, that's your moments of learning. For me personally, I had a session with a man. It's interesting to call it a session. I had an experience with a man here, and I dommed him, and I felt in the end that maybe I had dropped him. That I didn't fully close the container as I should. And he did share with me a lot of learning that he got from that. I think in the end, he had this experience of overcoming rejection. And these also experiences are very significant for each person. You said you're creating memories. This session with this man, he sent me a journal entry that he had written about that experience afterwards. And I did have a moment of like regret of like, fuck, how did I just like let him go? And then I have to remember of this compassion for myself, that I'm in the learning, and intimacy is messy sometimes, just as life, but that's where the real deepening happens. That's where our bond happens. I mean, I think if it ended so smoothly and perfectly, I might have not have gotten this sweet, journal entry, because you might not have had anything to write about, because there was no transformation that happened along the way. And I saw that with many of the couples, many of even the singles inside of the space. So after Saturday evening and the play party, we all come back together on Sunday to decompress as a unit, to share about our experiences. And there's something so deep in the learnings, and it's captivating. Oftentimes, you can go to events and you don't want to hear a bunch of people just speak, but here you're fully captivated and learning by everybody's experience in that sharing. I, for one, I think I was here towards like everyone had left and I was still hanging out with you and the angels. And I was like, I don't want to leave. It's like the family party where my dad is outside being like, let's go, Christy. And I'm like, oh, I'm still here. I don't want to go. And I had that. I didn't want to leave. And I've been in touch with some of the people who are part of the group, and these bonds are very significant when you see people out in the world. Like, you're definitely going to give a wink and a hug and be like, wow, we went through that immersive experience. And some of it is very vulnerable. We're sharing our fantasies with each other. So yeah, thank you for all that you're doing. What, you're an innovator in the intimacy space. Who is it? Who guides you? Who do you look up to in the world of erotic wellness?
Yeah, thank you for asking, because I think it's really important for people who are stepping into leadership in any arena, but especially in the arena of intimacy and erotic wellness and kink and sex and all of that, that there is an attention to being supported and guided, because I have my blind spots. You mentioned oopsies and ouchies. It's this idea that I'm not perfect either, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I need to be held accountable, and wanting to be held accountable so that there is an opportunity for greater depth and intimacy. You're right. Without our oopsies and ouchies, sometimes there's no way to drop in even deeper with ourselves and others. So I have my own, mentors and coaches and supervisors and therapists and girl, you name it. I love having those times carved out for my self-care and my mental well-being, to be able to call on people. Like I work with some really incredible, best kept secrets in the world. I have someone named Sean Roop, who is my Tantra mentor, and he's also a business coach. He's been guiding me and helping me evolve as a leader in these spaces. I have someone named Jennifer Owen, who is also Tantrika and has been guiding me. I have someone named Lynn Creedon, who is an energy master and a somatic healer. And I take that, I have so many more, but I take that evolution really seriously, because I know, again, that I need to get out of my ego and into my heart and recognize that I need help too, and that I'm still evolving. I'm still growing. Like, please, to anyone who's listening to this, if you meet someone who's a leader in this space and they kind of act like they have it all figured out and they know it all, please run in the other direction. Because they're not really embodying what the erotic is, which is like this sense of life force, alive, emotional energy that is messy, that is chaotic. It's not, structured. And I want to make sure that I can keep leading people into deeper places. So I need to lead myself those places. I need to make sure I'm not just talking the talk, but I'm walking the walk. So as anyone listening to this, if you're researching people to dive in with, make sure that they're doing their own work, that they're really an example, an embodiment of what they're teaching, and that they're holding themselves just as accountable as they're holding you.
What's your favorite part about Something More?
Wow, there's so many things I love about Something More, and I just love witnessing the transformation of people in such a short amount of time, watching how people look they look sexy, but they are looking a little nervous and a little shy on that first Thursday night, and a little unsure of themselves and unsure of this process. And then by the end, like you mentioned, like, I didn't want to leave. I hung out even longer, and we loved having you there, Christina. But like seeing at the end, they're like, you guys are like my best friends now. How do we stay in touch? I want to get everybody's information. I love you all. And like, everyone's on a cuddle puddle and piled up with each other and just sharing so much love and gratitude. I mean, I think to myself, like, is this my fucking job? Like, this is my life. I'm so lucky and I'm so honored. And that transformation and seeing that progression is like, gosh, it's just like what I would consider what miracles are made of, and what magic is truly what I witnessed in these 4 days. And it's such an honor to be a part of it.
What do you think are some of the biggest benefits for a couple to attend a Something More?
Yeah, for our couples that are coming, they're looking for something more. But what that means is like, there's an idea of like, is this it? And if whether they've been together for a year or 40 years, this idea of like, is there further places for us to dive into? Is there something out there that could actually open us up to more depth and intimacy and pleasure? And this actually gives people not only an experience of that, but concrete tools for them to actually apply into their own lives as individuals and as a couple. You know, we're helping people have this language of oopsies and ouchies that can be applied to their relationships, that people can have something like a kink checklist where they can go through a list of possibilities and actually ask themselves deeper questions around what they desire that can also not necessarily be erotic or sexual. It can actually be more about life dreams. And we're giving people an experience of something at their core essence that can be rippled out into their work, into their family life, into their relationships. So for couples, you know, being able to have an experience together to build trust and to open to new ways of exploring, it's like looking at your partner like they're brand new again. It's like, oh my gosh, like there's so much more here. There's an innocence and childlikeness that can arise of being like, I'm discovering new parts of myself, and we can do this together, discover these new parts of ourselves that haven't had an opportunity to shine. Let's reinvigorate our relationship and expand into these new places. So yeah, it can be just so thrilling to watch that happen in a couple.
I love how much you love your job and how much I love what I get to do of connecting what I call this industry of, you know, the relationship industry, the human connection industry. Are you familiar with Sierra Sullivan and Ron O. Smith? They have Enid World. Oh, I think it would be great if you went and taught a weekend immersion for their community.
They're talking to me about that now. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So, because I asked about couples, what about people who are currently single, as well as maybe people who aren't heterosexual?
Thank you for asking. You know, we welcome all identifications and orientations, and want to make sure people know that, you know, we welcome all genders and races and things like that. But you know, what you and I had talked about previously, Christina, is this like the ability to practice, right? To going beyond the cognitive and giving people a safe playground. And I say playground because it can be fun to practice really stepping into their own. Because quite often people I've noticed who are looking for a relationship are sometimes looking for people to fill the void. So we get curious around like, how do you get to fill yourself? Like, how do you get to fill your cup, get as bright and shiny as you can be from yourself, your own self-love, your own self-trust, and all of those things. And then instead of like seeking it out, how do you attract that more into your life, you know, through self-knowledge, through self-trust, through your sense of aliveness? It's contagious to be around people who are in flow with their erotic selves. Like, it's contagious to be around people who are like, you know, alive in that sexual energy and know how to be aware of it and know how to, you know, be with it. And also it feels so easy to be around people who are open-minded and that are enthusiastic about what life has to offer. And that's kind of what happens in these spaces for couples. And of course, for people who are maybe not in relationship, to have like a safe practice playground to really expand into their fullest potential so that they can actually call in the partnership that they're looking for, as opposed to feeling like a sense of emptiness or void that needs to be filled there, instead of like, how do I share this like alive, amazing energy with another person? And I've noticed that that's really helped single people find the person that they're more interested in being and doing life with, is that they've actually really found themselves. They love themselves. They've really come home to themselves, which makes so much space for other people to come in and meet them there as well.
Mm. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing in the world. And I, you know, what I will also add is that if you are in a relationship or if you're currently single, the types of people that come into this space are honoring of you and where you're at. So I know oftentimes I have friends who are coupled up and they want to experience something erotic with their partner. They've thought about going in and having a threesome, but then they get scared of like, oh, he might leave me for her. once we go into it, would never be able to come back. This is a space that is honoring of you and where you're at. But there's no weird social ties, or you can come into the weekend, you leave the weekend, and you don't even have to be in touch with anybody who is here. Confidentiality is really important. That's something that is said as you will listen to this podcast. We're not sharing any specifics about any individual. So you can feel comfortable coming in and having your own space and parting and going back to your own world and reality and taking with you what you want. Thank you, Kimi, for all that you're doing in the world. I know that not only do we have something more coming up in February, but also in March, you'll begin another session of the Dom Mastery, which is a 6-month program that you lead for people to step further into their erotic leadership. And then you're also working on a certification course, a year-long program for people who want to do the work that you're doing. Thank God that, you can shortcut, it took you a long time to develop this career, but you can shortcut it for a lot of other people and activate this as more deeply as a profession, because we hope in the future there are more people waking up to their eroticism. Anything that you want to share specifically about Dom Mastery?
Yeah, thank you. Because, something more is a little like a moosh boosh of like tastings of many things, like a little chef's tasting menu. But the Dom Mastery is really like this deep dive into a banquet of information and experiences where you can really fine tune and understand your erotic self on a whole other level. And we call it erotic leadership, but we also incorporate the aspects of the followership, the aspects of surrender and submission and all of that. So we want to make it a really well-rounded experience. But it's really, a deep dive with an amazing class of participants that's 6 months online with an in-person experience at the end. And people walk away like, ready to rule the world, in the sense of like, they just feel so attuned to themselves and so empowered, and they bring it into their work and they bring it into their companies, and they find how it changes the way that they show up in the world, and they get to have more choice in how that all develops, and they get to be the creatrix of their lives. So it's really fun to watch people dive into this world. And then the year long, that's going to hopefully be coming at the end of 2024 for those who want to incorporate this into their healing practice or their therapy practice. We want to create more people who embody this work so we can get more people the message and have more possibility for people to expand and love themselves more.
You're legendary, Kimi. Love you so much. Thank you all for listening to this episode. In the description, I'm going to include all the work to Kimi's programs, also her Instagram. You definitely want to go check out her Instagram. There's a lot of beautiful content that's there. Sometimes Instagram will try to censor it, but not censoring it here. I'm going to give you direct access so you can click on it and follow her. And if you are interested in joining for something more, I'm happy to answer any questions. Kimi is available to answer any questions, and love to share that experience with you and hear about it after you attend. If you are interested in joining us in the Love Club, I'm going to include that link as well. And while I do love speaking with you and sharing interesting, amazing experiences and about them happening, what I do enjoy most is being with you in person. So definitely check out that calendar at wedeepen.com. We have a bunch of WhatsApp groups. Happy to welcome you into those as well. And until next time, I love you. Bye for now.